Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Pushing Through Racial Barriers, a free lunch hour, 1 hour webinar for Alberta's screen-based industries. Since we are living in a virtual world and we continue to, I'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement that honors all of Mother Earth. I think it's safe to say that we're all very fortunate to call this beautiful planet our home. I'd love to introduce our panelists that are joining us today. First up, we have Jesse Lipscombe, who is an actor, a producer, an award-winning entrepreneur and activist, and the founder of the Make It Awkward campaign. If you'd like more info, just search that hashtag, Make It Awkward. We also have Tonya Williams. She is an Emmy nominee and the founder and executive director of the Reelworld Film Festival and Screen Institute, which is now in its 21st year. And we also have Omatta Udalor, an award-winning Nigerian-Canadian filmmaker and also a participant in Reelworld's Producers Program. My name is Shivani Saini, and I'm the founder of a new nonprofit based here in Alberta called Creatives Empowered. I'm also the founder of another company called Atelier Culturati, and Creatives Empowered, in partnership with Reelworld, is presenting Pushing Through Racial Barriers along with AMPIA. So thank you very much to everyone that's tuning in right now and to all of our panelists. We'd like to have a powerful and enlightening discussion today on the challenges that racialized talent face in Alberta's screen-based industries, from emerging to established. And we also want to talk about the solutions that we need to see. We also want to take this time to share some practical and supportive resources that you can access now to create more opportunity and equity. So really what we're going to be doing today is talking about pushing through racial barriers with story. One of the first things I'd like to address is actually looking at what the challenges are that racialized talent face in Alberta screen-based industries. And Jesse, maybe we can start with you.
Sure, absolutely. We only have an hour, right? I think the challenges have changed and they continue to change over time. If I recall back to my earlier acting days, a lot of those challenges, a lot of them had to do, if I'm getting auditions and getting roles, what those roles are. In the past and still currently, but a lot of stereotypical roles would exist. You know, you'd see the basketball player, the bouncer, the rapper, drug dealer, criminal. And obviously at a young age as an actor, it feels difficult to be able to put your foot down and say no, because, you know, you got to have work to get work. But then moving forward, you know, a lot of it, I think, is a seat at the table. You know, whether you're a producer, actor, writer, but being in the room and having some representation at those tables I can see it being a difficult path for people to get into. So I think the struggles often are that, you know, it's the welcoming into and having roles that are created from the right perspective and the right scope. And I still think there's room for a lot more of that.
At one point in a conversation you and I had, you had made a choice to no longer be part of the problem, so to speak. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was, I mean, a little bit to what I had said before. I was getting, you know, I'll get some roles and I'll take the roles. And then on one end, that's happening and I'm an actor. And then on another end, as an advocate and an activist, and talking about the problems that exist right now, problems with portrayals on television, while just getting off set while I'm adding to that content. So it felt very hypocritical. And I remember there was a moment where I decided that I can't be also a part of the problem while I'm trying to fight against it. And it was a good shift, because I just stopped taking roles that, you know, shone a light on the BIPOC population in a negative way with no reason other than just to fill a role. And yeah, that was the spot for it. It was just this idea of trying to say, I don't want to see this, but also the golden handcuffs if I got a job and I want to keep it. So I had to make that decision myself.
Omatta, maybe you can also speak to some of your experiences. You're from Nigeria. I understand that you're new to the country. But you also already have a great body of work under your belt, under your company name. Tell us a little bit about what you've been experiencing here in your time in Alberta.
Thank you, Shivani. Well, I have to say that it's been a very interesting experience to start. Back when I was in Nigeria, I never saw myself as Black or anything else. I just saw myself as a person. And then coming over here, I now realize that there is a distinction, right? So that was the first thing that kind of hit me. And getting on different sets, I noticed that there wasn't much roles, just like Jesse said. It pretty much stereotypical roles, just pretty much a token in the show. You're either in the background, or you're that one black guy who says the one corny line, or it's that role that portrays a black character in a certain stereotypical way. And that played along. Even in the technicalities, you'd see that you're probably not lighting the black characters as well as they should be. You don't have hair and makeup guys who are conversant with texture of hair or makeup. They don't have a skin tone for makeup and stuff like that. And you'd find yourself, I find myself when I get on set, especially when I sit in the makeup chair, it's always like, oh, what's your hair like? Oh, yeah, that's fine. It's perfect. Live it like that. And it doesn't really add or take away from the story. But basically, it's just the fact that they have no idea what to do with you on set, apart from you portraying that stereotypical role. And apart from that, I also realized that it's really hard, like Jesse said, getting into the industry. There's no resource per se until very recently, when there's this surge of inclusiveness and diversity, where everyone's now rallying together and trying to provide information, because we've been told that when we complain, we are told by the white executives who run the shows that they don't know if we exist. We want this kind of talent, and we don't know if you guys have any. So it's pretty much the onus is on us to really put ourselves out there and let them know that we do exist. Unfortunately, the system was built on a system based on economic dominance by one culture over the other, and that system needs to be broken down if we are to receive real change. Those laws need to be changed, need to be broken down, and probably reshaped and redesigned to accommodate the changes of the world and the diverse cultures that exist.
Okay. And maybe Jesse and Omatta, you have some parallels in your experiences, in that you both have also made very conscious choices to start creating and telling your own stories. So can you, Jesse, maybe you can start. Tell us a little bit about the importance of that, the importance of racialized talent, being able to have that kind of sovereignty and ownership and creative control over the stories they create and tell.
Yeah, it's okay. So yes, I did this as a result of the fact that it didn't exist before. So I'm not like excited about it. I am, because it's given me a number of different skill sets, and I can take my own career into my own hands. And I've learned how to produce. I've been an executive producer for a long time, director and writer, and I'm creating and writing content, from my scope as well, and ensuring that I'm bringing the right people in a room, solving the problems that I saw beforehand that didn't exist, and trying my best to make a different environment and different platform for this to be a little bit better. But that's as a result of it not existing. Many other actors and producers and writers don't have to do that, don't have to be that creative, don't have to figure out a way to enter the market. So yes, it's unfortunate, but it definitely is creating very robust, very talented, multi-talented, multitasking BIPOC artists in this industry. So given that every time you're hiring one, you can probably rest assured you've got someone who's done some work everywhere and probably has a really great idea of how to do it. And one thing I wanted to say about what Omatta said, you're so right with the hair and makeup, because you sit down and they're always like, looks good. I've had shows where I'm green because of the makeup they didn't have. So I bring my own makeup. I know what colors I am in summer and the winter. And you also get to decide what your character's hair is going to be, because they're not going to say anything. They're not like, no, that's not, you don't know. This is the hair for my character. So you get a little bit more, I guess, control over your character in some senses, because they have no idea what to do with you. That's all for now.
Omatta, maybe you can also just speak to the drive that you've been experiencing to want to tell your own stories, create and produce them.
Absolutely. Like I said, when I came in, there was little or no work, especially down here in Calgary, where most of the work that comes here is pretty much, Alberta generally is pretty much timepieces, Hell on Wheels, Tin Star, Fargo, and shows like that, The Revenant, stuff like that. where they are here pretty much for the topography and not the characters. So on shows like that, there's pretty much no options you have than to do background or day players and stuff like that. Except, of course, for the 1 or 2 token characters that I think are just there to fill the diversity quota. But yeah, for me, not being able to find good characters to play, not enough work, I decided I've always wanted to create, but I was kind of like pushed earlier than I planned to get into that space of being a producer and creating my own content, because there's so much stories to tell. Especially from my perspective, coming from Nigeria, we have so many rich stories that are global and can actually be incorporated in the environment I find myself now. And I don't see those kind of stories being told on networks, on streaming services. So I started a production company, Handcuffs Entertainment Inc., about 2 years ago. And I started out producing short films, just telling stories that pretty much are heavy character-driven stories based on Black characters, diverse characters, people of color, and how they react to the same stories, same situations that we see on TV, but just coming from that angle and the eye of someone who has a different culture, a different way of responding and reacting to similar situations, pretty much for me.
Thank you, Omatta. Tonya, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you. I know I wanted to set up a little bit of Alberta context, but we'd love to also just hear about some of the experiences you've had. How do the challenges that Omatta and Jesse have described here in Alberta, how does that mirror some of your own experiences and also what you've seen across the country?
Well, it certainly reminds me that things haven't changed that much because their experiences were exactly my experiences. And I started my career in 1977. So I just assumed they'd never be a hair person that knew how to do my hair. They'd never be a makeup person. So I taught myself those things. So people forget that on top of whether you're training to be a good actor, you also have to be a great makeup person. You have to be a great hair person for yourself. Because there is just and there's really not it becomes a point where it's not even worth discussing or trying to fight for it. I mean, over the years we fought for things and then finally they would come. But I'm talking back in 1977, just asking for these things seemed so bizarre to the production that they label you quite quickly as you're a troublemaker, you're not a team player. I love that. It always comes back to you're not a team player if you bring up anything about the racial discord that's going on. It doesn't just happen, by the way. I mean, yes, it's with actors, but I feel that there's a struggle and a fight with all the people behind the camera as well, in terms of even getting paid fairly. I mean, many of us know that we're paid less, and that's happening today. And if you bring those things up, they think you're not being a team player. It always just sort of comes up that way. I love what Jesse had said. When I was growing up, I was an obsessive, watcher of television and always thought the representation wasn't very good. But like Omatta, I was born in England, but I spent, a good from the age of like a year and a half to 7.5 in Jamaica. It really shifts your perspective when you're living in an environment where lots of people are Black and they come as, the dry cleaners and the police officers and lawyers and doctors and everyone that you see on local television. So that becomes your norm. But then we went back to England when I was about 7.5, 8. And then there's like a jarring, this is really not how it is outside of these places. You don't see very many Black people here, but already that confidence is instilled in you that is a norm somewhere. So it may not be a norm in those areas where there's predominantly white people, but if you already come with that confidence, it shifts the way that you present yourself. So even when I started my career, there were a lot of really negative stereotype parts, but I just said no. And so many people will say today, how could you do that when you're still a struggling actor and you say no? But I don't know why, but that you're becoming part of the problem, especially if you've come from another place and you see how it is. in a predominantly place that's Black, for instance, and then you arrive in a place that's predominantly white, you know that part of your responsibility now is to slowly bring that community to the understanding that these representations are very negative and detrimental and harmful. And the only way it'll stop is if we ourselves, the people of color, just say, no, we won't do that. We won't take those roles. And if everyone said that, by the way, what would they do? Like if every single person said that no one was going to direct that show or act in that show or write that show, they'd be pretty troubled by that. So in numbers, we have to always remember that it's in the numbers that we can make the changes that we want to make. But yeah, just listening to that, it's all, jump in, Jesse, please, because
No, because I'm fully agreeing with you. Like I love the pieces you're touching on here, and as I hear it, I love this idea. Of course, the numbers we move the needle collectively when we do things together. But I think there's also this, like we talk about this fear of speaking up and saying the wrong things. But I always like to give benefit of the doubt, because I really do think a lot of the time, a majority of like these white writers and white producers are only doing what they know. So they're doing it from their scope and might even be trying their hardest to like write from a Black perspective. And until they're called out, until it's brought up, until it becomes a regular discussion, because at the end of the day, they most likely want to make the show the best it can be. And they might not know it will be this much better if it's done this way. So it's almost like it's on us to make sure that we do stand up at whatever stage we are in. It's more a question of like how to converse with people that maybe are superior on set, whatever, but ensuring that we know and we're confident enough to be able to add and offer things that not only protect ourselves and uplift ourselves, but also will make the entire show better. So this like collective movement of having confidence to be able to stand up for ourselves, our people, but really for the art, the craft itself, just gets better when the stories are told from like the real lived experiences of the people. So I think, most creators probably want their show to be better and would love if someone could tell them they screwed up in a possible, nice, respectful way, if you can. But if you don't have to, whatever, just tell them how you feel.
But I love, what Jesse just touched on is something that most of us in the industry get very scared of. And it's that you can say no in a nice and respectful way. And you should mean it. There has to be, and I don't mean you're going to fight every single battle. Like every single thing, you just become annoying when you're going to fight everything. But you have to literally have boundaries and the line in the sand where under no circumstances do you cross this. It happens to me every single day. And just recently, it got to the point where I was part of a video that I was part of a producer on. The powers that were taking out what I thought were crucial parts about anti-Black racism. I reached the point where it was, I understand your point, because they were saying I didn't understand their point. I understand your point. I think this is the only way that we can go forward. Either you take my name off the project completely and do whatever it is you want to do, because, it's your thing and you can do what you want. But I have to say that I don't want my name attached to something that does not stand behind this very issue that we happen to be talking about within this particular video. So at that point, I literally hung up the phone and I said to my team, I'm pretty sure we're going to be, our part is going to end in this, because you have to be ready for that, by the way. You can't make a line in the sand and then later go, oh, I changed. Like I was ready. I thought the video is just not going to be screened, and I'm fine with that. But the next morning they came back and it wasn't, because I had thought they were coming back to have another conversation, but they just came back and said, okay, it's all in. We're not taking that stuff out. No one was more shocked than me, but you literally have to be ready to, this is the hill I'm ready to die on. I really don't care what the repercussions are. I don't care if you don't pay me. I don't care if the thing doesn't get made. If you feel that strongly about something, then you should say it and then walk away from it. And don't feel that, especially when I talk to young people, this is always a funny thing to me. They think that these opportunities are one in a lifetime. They think like, if I say no to this, my entire career is hinged on this one thing. I can tell you, for someone who's been in the industry 45 years, that is not the case. I've turned down a million things. I said no to lots of things. You just have to do what is in your heart, because you have to live with yourself and you have to live with these choices that you're making. And it's not something, I said to someone recently who wanted to do something now. She was just starting out in her career. And I say, I think an old Buddhist saying from, from, of course, thousands of years ago was how you start is how you should want to end. So you shouldn't make a bunch of choices going, oh, I'm starting out in the industry this way, but once I make it, Tonya, I'm going to be this other way. You just have to make those hard choices now. Like, it doesn't change later because you've actually set yourself up as someone who does do those things. So it's kind of harder to do a 180 after that.
I really appreciate what all of you have said about this. I think it helps to just reinforce the idea and the notion, the importance of really establishing like healthy boundaries, which then ties into some of the really important conversations that, are not only our industry here in Alberta, but Canada's industry as well needs to continue to have, right? If we're going to create the kind of change that we need to see, that we want to experience as racialized artists and professionals, the reality is we're going to have to create that kind of change together, and that's going to require having important conversations. So Tonya, you've mentioned that from your perspective, a lot hasn't necessarily changed over the last 20 years, but what has changed that is inspiring and exciting for you to see?
So even though a lot hasn't changed, a lot has changed. So it's a balance. Like, go back to 1977, no one was even having these conversations, even though it was blatant, and there was blatant racism. People were not having conversations about these things. But when I started Reelworld, and that's in 2000, I remember one of the first grants we wrote, I put the word racialized in it. That was just the word. Grants had never seen that word. They were used to cultural. So the grants officer who was in charge said, can we go and change all the word racialized to cultural differences, not racialized differences, or cultural people, not racialized people. And I had to explain to him, there's a difference between culture and race. And that's why Reelworld is about race. We're not focused on the cultural, because you can be a culture from anywhere. And we're talking about, they're Canadians that are Black or Asian that have been here, 10 generations or so. What are they culturally? They're Canadian. That's the culture that they are. We're really focused on race. So I would say going from that language to the way we talk now is like, and that's only 20 years, is amazing. People are saying words that people were uncomfortable with before, just saying race or even the term BIPOC or Black, Indigenous, racially diverse people, or these were not words even 20 years ago that people were comfortable. So that's a big part of it. I would say people's awareness of the inequality, of the racism, it was slowly growing, but of course there was an explosion after last June when when that video of George Floyd, I mean, we had, wasn't that was the first time Black people had been brutalized. It certainly was not the first time over the, many centuries actually, but it reminded me of the power of the visual, the power of the screen. I mean, someone could have described that. In fact, someone could have said, oh my God, there was this guy, George Floyd, and 3 cops were on him and 1 guy had his knee on him, whatever. But nothing was more powerful than watching over 7 minutes of it with no one saying anything. No one had to say anything. People were in tears. And it reminded me what's powerful about the industry that we're in. And I'm excited for young people who are, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. I'm excited for them because you're at an amazing, the things are shifting and changing like they have in the past, but we're at another change. And what's important is that we don't slide back, but we keep pushing with this new change and let people not in 2 or 3 years from now sort of just slide back into some sort of complacency. But there's definitely more Black people on television and people of color, but specifically now we're talking about Black people, but more people, Black people working behind the scenes. There are 2 shows running right now with 2 Black showrunners. I mean, it had been 40 years with only 3 shows that were Black and none of them with showrunners. So the change is coming, but it's slow.
Yeah.
Jesse, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. I was thinking of the changes as Tonya was speaking. And, one of the big ones that I have noticed is streaming is a huge one. The number of gatekeepers has increased. And so it's not such a small amount of individuals that are making the choices of what everybody will see. So people, like even the people, the fans have a larger voice of what they like. When I look at the different streaming services and how many shows that are called foreign, whatever, just different languages that I can have subtitles with, but I can watch shows from different places and see different cultures and different races and be inspired by them and create new stories as a result of them. So I love that. I mean, Obeni, I don't know if Obeni, I might have said his name wrong, but one of the commenters, he had said it's really hard to be a Black filmmaker in Alberta. And first, it's just really hard to be a filmmaker for sure. And then add Black makes it even more difficult. But if we look at like now versus 10 years ago, the fact that you can like show and prove, even if it was just put up on YouTube and people love it, and then you can take something to the powers that be and show how great your show is. Beforehand, you would have to just walk into a room, if you're invited into the room, and have to tell the story, and that was it. So now there's a lot of other options, and we have more tools to be able to tell our stories. But as Tonya said, we can't stop. We have to keep pushing forward. I don't think at any stage it's going to be easy. I mean, this career isn't easy. It's not the one anyway, but I don't think it's ever going to get easier. But I think we do have more tools to make bigger waves right now.
Omatta, would you like to jump in, please?
Absolutely. Just piggybacking off things that Jesse and Tonya have said, it's a domino effect. And the more we keep talking about it, the more we're going to get heard. And that is the only way that we could possibly effect some form of change. As human beings, we are very social beings, and we tend to respect authority. And authority here would be the production houses, the showrunners, and stuff like that. And we can only implement that change when we all speak in one voice. I don't know for certain exactly what the discussions were around the show in Calgary that was shot some time back. I think the show was Damnation, if I'm not mistaken. And the gist then was that when they first came in to do their surveys and stuff and send the scripts down to actor and all that, they got pushed back because there was not a prominent Black or person of color in the show. And everyone thought that was it. They were probably going to move their production to maybe BC or Toronto, wherever, right? And after a while, a couple of months later, they came back, and the lead character ended up being portrayed by a Black lady. And so that's just one example of the power of a collective voice. And those are things that we need to continue doing as a collective individually, from an individual actor to associations like unions like actor and IATSE, to even down to casting directors and agents. You have to all be able to advocate for your clients, your peers. Just keep pushing the word that, okay, this role, this is how I see it. I don't think this is appropriate and stuff like that. And just keep on pushing the message out there. And as individual actors as well, stand your ground, always know what your worth is, and don't assume that that is your only chance. And if I turn this down, I wouldn't get any other chance. I'll be blacklisted. I'm not a team player. Guess what? They are not a team players if they turn you down. So yeah, just keep pushing. And I know that there's so much more we can accomplish as creators, both Black and people of color. We've got so much stories. We're really talented. We've got so many skill sets that have not been given the opportunities to come to the fore. And we just have to keep pushing.
Yeah, go, Tonya. I want to jump in.
I was going to say, one of the things I'd love to see us get comfortable with in Canada, though, is that Black people also just fight for Black issues. And we fight for our place as Black people. It's always important that there be Black and Indigenous and people of color, but I feel a lot of times we're so conscientious about including everybody else who's racialized. And it's important for some things, but there are times like this panel is about Black people. And there are 3 Black people on here talking about their experience. We don't have to water it down by saying it's BIPOC or it's people of color. We're talking about Black people in very specific. And that becomes part of that empowerment that we were talking about before. I still think there's an accountability, not just with white people, by the way, and other people, but with Black people themselves, in saying we need to carve a space. And in Alberta, we need to carve a space that's for Black people and our issues and what we're fighting for. And we're happy if you allies all want to come on and help us, but that's what the focus needs to be. So that was one part of it, and I'm sure there'll be discussion on that too. But it's always to remember not to be a victim. I had to write them down, so remember, people are still thinking in terms of being victimized about something. You're a victim because you're actually redefining what success is from what you've been told success is. You're looking at Canadians are always looking at Hollywood for a version of success, and then it waters down to Black people are looking at what their white counterparts or what other people are doing to success. And I've defined success as a very personal thing. So I have a definition of it that's for me, and it's always been about a certain sense of freedom. I have to feel that I'm not trapped, or that I'm not just doing something, walking the paces. You have to be a success in Alberta first. I think a lot of people will be thinking, how do I get out of Alberta to find the success? But you could be creating the future success where Alberta becomes a capital and a really significant place that impacts those stories. There are great stories about Black people, Black stories out of Alberta. I mean, there's most of the whole wild west of Black people were out of there. Take time to cultivate your career where you are. Be powerful there first before you even think of stretching out of there. Let people from the outside come calling for you. Let them look for you because you're churning out great content from where you are.
You just spoke to my heart right there. I tell you did for so many reasons, because growing up, I was that guy. I want to get out of here. I got to get out of here to succeed, and I chose not to leave and try to create stuff here and write stuff. But that's so true. And I think across the board, I still struggle with it. And I struggle with a number of things too. You mentioned, and bravo for this too, it's a Black panel, talk about Black things. And I can even see in sometimes the hesitancy and the precaution, this idea of, you can see the unconscious bias that still exists in our own brains from things that have happened beforehand, confirmation bias. Like, I have to be careful that I'm not taking up too much space, because the feeling of taking up too much space historically has actually pushed me out of the room, and all I want to do is get into the room. And that goes all the way into the idea of that to get in the room, you have to be white as you can, even if you're Black, just to get in there. This idea of, start your career the way you want to finish, as you mentioned. If you're Black, be Black right when you get in the door. They know how Black you'll be when you're there, and you could be authentic and you can be proud of yourself the entire way. But it's tough to do that when you don't have a safe space. And this entertainment industry has not necessarily been a safe space for Black people to be able to do those kind of things. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to do, is make sure we're fighting for that space, so we don't have to take 40 years to get there, 20 years to get there, but you can walk in truly, truly authentic. And this brings me to what Omatta said. One thing, you said this idea of one voice. And for me, that one, I was like, I mean, it wouldn't be a panel if we didn't disagree, right? Because I feel like this idea could be somewhat problematic, because Black people aren't a monolith, right? And the white people don't have to worry about the one voice. They just tell stories. You get a story. No one's worrying, like, is that the white voice? It doesn't matter, right? Like, I've said this before. I'm ancient walnut in the summer. I went to Home Depot to check, and I'm toasted bagel in the winter, right? I mean, I'm called Black. It's fine. My shirt says human being. Look at all the different humankind, all the different colors. But I think it's more important to have a collective goal, right? Like a collective goal, this is where we're going to do, but not necessarily saying that this is the voice of Black people. I think that, again, can be problematic, because then anyone can be like, well, we talked to a Black guy. It's good. We're good. That's not good. No, that's not what we're doing. So,
yeah, totally. I get you, Jesse. I think I meant when I say one voice in terms of, like you said, our goals and putting our foot down, everyone saying, no, this is the way it's got to be. You've got to have Black stories on TV. You've got to have stories written for Black people by Black creators, because those are the only people who understand where you're coming from, if you get what I mean. So when I say one voice, it's actually as a collective. You only have one voice to change a system. Individually, you wouldn't be able to say, go this way and go that way. But as one voice, you can change the system and rewrite history.
I love it. Yeah, that makes sense. Appreciate it.
You know what I love in this discussion, something you both said too, and you reached on it again, Jesse, is, feeling safe, having a collective safe space. I think what's wonderful with what Shivani's doing is she's starting that, creating that sort of collective space. But I think there can be many collective spaces. There could be, Black filmmakers in Alberta space. The more you can gather together, and gathering could be 10 people, 15 people, 20 people. You'd be amazed how 20 people sharing something together can just make you feel so not alone in the struggle, in what you're doing. So I'm a big believer in collective anythings. Black women filmmakers come together, Black men cinematographers come together. You should just have a lot of these different subgroups, because you're just sort of, cheering each other on and reminding each other you're not alone. Someone's there, we've been there. And then even if 20 of you came together and wrote a letter and signed it, 20 of you, to any organization in Alberta, I think they would listen. I think they would invite you in for a meeting and want to hear what you have to say, because that just doesn't happen very often. Not just in Alberta, doesn't happen very often in Canada. I'm reminded of, this was maybe like 15 years back, I can't remember, but for some reason that fall season, there was like literally no Black shows, like no Black people, no Black shows. I can't remember what it was. And I didn't even notice it, by the way, but the NAACP noticed it. And they wrote a sharp letter to all the broadcasters saying, and it's great when they get to say their membership is X amount of million people. They were saying, if we don't see a Black show on your networks this September, we're going to have our people boycott every sponsor you have on your networks. And I can tell you that was the year that Blair Underwood was the star of the series where he was the president. And that thing happened. That show came up in 4 weeks. From when the NAACP said that to when that show got launched, those broadcasters went, go back into the archives. There's got to be something in development. They were scared. I mean, you're not going to lose your sponsors.
Yeah.
I love all these perspectives that all of you are sharing, and I love how this discussion has been evolving organically in such a great way. When it comes to creating space within Alberta, we have another comment again from Benny, who says systemic discrimination is a big problem here. There is diversity in film industry in Alberta, but there is no inclusion, and Alberta institutions shouldn't be selling diversity only. Just in terms of creating a safe space, that was one of the reasons why I established Creatives Empowered. It is Alberta's first and only org for artists and creatives who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color that work in film, TV, media, and the arts. I love what everyone has said about coming together, in the sense of one voice, but I think also just in the numbers of having many different voices, speaking for the need to create the kind of equity we need to see. I think it's really important as well, and this is, for example, is also part of our mandate as Creatives Empowered, is to create partnerships and to collaborate, to create connections with other voices that, again, are speaking from their own unique perspectives, but are also communicating things that we want to communicate as well. Jesse, I can really relate to some of your experiences in the industry where you would often feel like you had to demote your presence when you would walk into a specific room or a space. That's something I've also experienced as a woman of color. And I'm excited at the kind of change that I think we're going to start seeing, because it's really going to really, for me, what I'm excited about are creating spaces that are ideally free of that racial and that unconscious bias. Because when we can create that kind of context, when we can set up environments that work in that way, I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised by the way that frees up our creative energy. And not just that, but also how it empowers our health as human beings. This is my 2 cents on some of the things that you've all said. Tonya, we'd also like to be able to talk about some of the practical and supportive resources that Reelworld offers that everyone can access. And we wanted to share this information with Alberta's screen-based industries so that there's an opportunity for folks here to understand that you can actually do things now to create more opportunity and equity. And there are different things that you can access. So speaking of the word access, you now have this new database called Access Reelworld, which launched last year. And our tech expert, Matt, is actually just going to play a little video. Why don't we run that right now? It'll give people a chance to learn what it's about.
Everyone's talking about diversity and inclusion, but the very next thing they'll say after that is, how do we find the talent?
Access Reelworld is the #1 tool available for you to search in English or in French that diverse talent that you are seeking. On the home page, just push the search button. We have Canadian Black, Indigenous, people of color, creatives, crews, and production staff in the screen industry waiting to get hired. Whether you are seeking to hire in Nova Scotia, Quebec, Ontario, Vancouver, or any of the other provinces or territories, we have what you're looking for. You can search over 100 job categories, including stunt coordinators, electrical, screenwriters, hair makeup, production designers, set medics. You can also search by ethnicity, unions, affiliations, and languages. We want to give you the opportunity to have qualified racially diverse individuals in all areas of your production. When you click any candidate, you will see detailed information of their experience, demo reel, and their representation. You can download their CV. There is an easy, secure way for you to message them. If you have a job or opportunity you wish to post, Access Reelworld has that option available. All our members will be able to see your job posting and contact you directly. With Access Reelworld, you can feel confident that the diverse talent you are seeking is waiting for you. To join or search is free. Show your solidarity and join our growing list of production companies and organizations supporting Access Reelworld.
All right. Well,
Did you see that we scrolled by Omatta there?
I did, yeah.
He's on our video.
I need to get on this thing. I'm not even on it.
Why do you think we're here today, Jesse? This is to let the people in Alberta
sharing resources.
I think Shivani was like our third person.
You're right. But Tonya, this is the thing too. There's so many this idea of getting the things together so we're aware of what's available for us. You know, that Shivani and I we talked about that beforehand too. That idea, like there's all these pockets of amazing things that are happening, and it's great that they are. But what can we do together collectively? You know, I wanted to start a Black filmmakers thing in Alberta, but there's probably already one with 6 people that I don't know about, and you know, this is great.
It's very hard. I would say that's the hardest part of everything. And it's not just in the Black community, by the way. Having lived in Los Angeles, and I live here now since 1987, the thing that shocks me when I go to Canada is how little connected the entertainment is across the provinces. Like people in Quebec don't know what's happening in Vancouver. And then when you talk about racially diverse people, they really don't know what's happening even in their own province, let alone. You can come to LA and you can meet one Black person on the street who's in the entertainment industry, and you will be 3 degrees of separation of every single person in Los Angeles. And I don't know how you make that happen, because people here read the trades like it's, like the Bible. They read it every single day. They're on a million newsletters. I talk to people now all the time. I say, are you signed up to, any of the newsletters? Are you even a member of any of the unions or ACCT, the Academy? You can join that, get on their newsletter. Like, people literally are getting no information, but that's not other people's fault. They are not being proactive about it. And then they'll say, I don't know how my career is not moving anywhere. And I'm like, how is that not possible? Like,
so let's get proactive. I'm just looking at the time, and there are some really awesome resources that Reelworld has that we want to make sure we push out there today. So Matt, if you could bring up that card on Access Reelworld, there's just some points here. So this is a database, and it's a database for talent who are racialized, and then also for people who are seeking talent. Tonya, do you want to touch on some other points here and mention anything else that's important? I know transparency is key about this.
Yeah, I wanted to create something where you can see everybody, where you can contact everybody. And of course, a lot of people putting databases together, they're basically saying, we want the white community to hire us. But a big part of Access Real World is I want other Black, Indigenous, people of color to hire each other. And so it's not always about trying to get white Canada to hire you. You also at times get funding for things. Shivani will know this. If we get a funding for a consultant, we're looking for a racially diverse consultant. If we're always trickling that money down to whatever area we can in the industry. And that's what each one of you should be doing too. If you need a website done, make sure you're finding someone who is a Black person or Indigenous person to do that website for you. That's how you create jobs. We're in a position that we can be creating that work.
Wonderful. There are some other resources as well. Tell us a little bit about the Reelworld Film Festival.
So this is now going to be in our 21st year. The festival is only showing, our festival is just about Canadian, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Canadian, we play no international films. So this is the festival that you should have on your radar, on your calendar. Submissions just opened in January. They'll close around May. I can guarantee you June 1st, everyone emails me and says, is it too late to submit my film now? I'll be like, it's been 5 months, and you wait till the day after submissions close. So please make sure if you have content from features, whether it's documentaries or narratives, to short films, to web series, to animation, to music videos, and you are Canadian and can legally work in this country, we want to see your content. If you go to the website reelworld.ca, you will see how to submit your films. It's on Film Freeway. So yeah, we want to see that.
Awesome. Excellent. Excellent. So if you have a film, go to reelworld.ca and make sure you check out the details on submitting your film to their festival. You also have another great program called the Emerging 20 program. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this will be going into our 20th year with that program. So it's an incubator program where people submit their ideas, their content. All people have to be Canadian, Black, Indigenous, people of color. And then it goes through a jury process. So we choose 20 people with their projects. And then we help them through a 2-week and very intense workshop, and then set up pitch sessions for them with industry professionals, with broadcast executives. And this year we added an additional 3-month one-on-one mentorship. So they got an opportunity to work with a mentor who'd read their project and wanted to work with them over a 3-month period. So it's about getting people to get their projects out there and get them made.
And I think a great point as well about that program is that you have an opportunity once you have been accepted and you go through the program to actually be eligible for Telefilm's Talent to Watch program, which could potentially give you
Shivani's still on it. Yes.
which could potentially give you up to $150K towards your project, which is great.
But you'll have to look out because Telefilm, because of all the changes that have happened, especially in the last 8 months, they're revising this program. So we don't know what it's going to be going forward. But up until last year, we're one of the Telefilm partners. So you'd have to go through our program to be considered to be submitted for that Telefilm Talent to Watch.
Okay, great. There are a couple of other resources.
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, we've had some success stories through our alumni. So that's great. They've been able to make their films.
A couple of other resources we wanted to touch on. So one is called the Reelworld Producers Program, which Omatta is currently a part of. Maybe just tell us a little bit about that one too.
Absolutely. Once again, and we're doing this in partnership with Bell Media. So we kicked that off October of last year, where applications were open. But of course, maybe nobody here heard about them. Omatta did though, so he submitted. And then in December we announced, and then we had hundreds of people, and then we announced 12 people who hail from Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, Quebec, Alberta, where Omatta is, Vancouver, Ontario. So it's been really fantastic. And now they've been going through the program, and maybe Omatta can speak to how it's been. He's been at more of the workshops than I have, but it did kick off at Ottawa Prime Time, and they had 3 days of workshops through Prime Time Ottawa. Omatta?
Yes, Tonya, for sure. I would say it's been really educative and informative. The past couple of weeks has totally blown my mind. All I've known about producing is what I've learned on set and my personal ideas. I've never really had the opportunity of understanding the business angle to producing content. And this program is just totally enlightening. Just yesterday, we had the first session on starting your business, your production company, and all the legalities that entails. That's just one of the many webinars and sessions that have been slated for us. So right now we are going through the process from inception, picking your concept, and finding a way to package your pitch, and hopefully get some form of sponsorship partnership with a broadcaster. And hopefully at the end of the program, we'll see some new Black content, people of color content on networks across Canada, and probably something on Netflix and Amazon Prime.
And what's wonderful, something Omatta is saying too, this program is a 12-month program, by the way. So it's not a rushed, weekend or a couple of weeks or whatever. We made it a 12-month program. And one of the contingencies was we are training the next group of producers is what I call them. These are not actors who will also produce or directors who also produce. We wanted people who did not have their own projects at all, and they couldn't even know the people for the projects. They have to go out and find projects that they've never heard of, because we want to teach them also, how do you negotiate that? How do you go to a stranger or a writer or someone with a novel or an agent? And how do you have that conversation and negotiate that? So they've been going through that too, and they have, I think, up until May to choose their projects. So if there are any creators out there who have scripts, who have stories, especially for television, for series, for streaming, please get in contact with Reelworld so that these producers could consider your project.
Okay, awesome.
It is a daunting process. Trust me. Finding something new. Oh wow.
So here's the thing I want to say to those who are watching right now. Like, I'm having jealousy of the past, because I wish when I was younger this thing existed. So I'm going to say, though, if you're watching right now and you've been struggling and trying to figure things out, my entire career, and I'm going to also say this, I figured out how to do it without all of this. And you can. So this idea of I can't because enough of that. Actually, you can, and you can figure stuff out. I had hoped and wished that there were things like Reelworld that existed. Almost every single piece that's been mentioned today was the thing. I was I just wish if there was this thing. They're all right there. So at some point you have to say, actually, I just don't really want to be a filmmaker, because it's sitting right there in front of you. And it's okay, pick a different career, but don't whine about it, because it's all there. The answers are right there. What you guys have created is phenomenal, by the way. I love it. And if I could rewind and get in my DeLorean, I would be all over every single piece of this thing. For those who aren't using it, also, it's if you don't get in, these aren't no's forever. This is just a different door. And there's so many ways that you can still make these things happen and create new pathways. But just super kudos, Tonya. Very cool. Reelworld is very dope.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm with Jesse. I also wish I had access to all of this type of stuff in my formative years. That would be amazing. I know we're coming up on almost 1 o'clock. There's one more thing, one more program that Reelworld has called the LA Consulate event. So Tonya, let's just touch on this quickly, and then we'll wrap things up with all our closing thoughts.
Absolutely. I've always had a strong relationship with the Los Angeles consulate down here. And then when Zabe became the consul general, and some of you will remember him from Little Mosque on the Prairie, he was the lead actor. Then he became the Toronto film commissioner, I believe it was. And now he's our consul general here. So he and I have been talking for years. And last year was going to be the 20th anniversary of Reelworld. So pre-COVID, I know it's too far to go back and think about that. We were going to have a big, huge at the consulate event in celebration of that, and bring a lot of Hollywood productions and get some producers from Canada who were Black, Indigenous, people of color to come down. Then COVID struck, and we kept thinking, oh, it'll only last a few months. So by November, we said, let's make this online and virtual. And that's what it became. So we got 20 of our alumni and people that were on our Access Reelworld and just amazing people, and to be virtual. And then we got a consultant here in Los Angeles, and they got to meet some of the top showrunners and production people here. It was less about pitching your project It was more about we wanted to introduce them and help start building those relationships. Our industry is it's not really about, here's my script, here I am an actor, hire me. This is a very relationship driven. People want to work with people they know, people they like, people they feel some sort of connection to. And so you have to build that first. Once you have that connection and you've built it for a while, then you hand them over a project or talk to them about something. But as I like to say to people, it's like you don't go into a bar and walk over and go, hi, I want to marry you. It's like, it's too weird. You start by saying, small things like, hello, how are you today? So we need to do that in our industry too. Let's just take the baby steps, but build those relationships.
Awesome. Tonya, thank you so much. It's great to be able to share all those resources. And if folks want to learn more about any of this stuff, you can just go to reelworld.ca. All of this information is on there, including access to the database, which is accessreelworld.ca. As soon as I started seeing databases like this one come out in 2019, 2020, I personally, as a racialized professional, was absolutely elated, and I started signing up for everything.
Yeah, join them all.
Because I had just never seen this kind of thing before, and I thought, hey, well, this is great. Let's and I'm telling all of the peers and colleagues I have that would be like, in my age range, who are also quite established, to do the same thing. So
And by the way, I just wanted to say, with the production companies in Alberta, please go on and join we are making a list of production companies across Canada, and we're putting little asterisks beside the ones that are run or owned by Black, Indigenous, people of color, because some other people want to know who those production companies are. So do that too.
Perfect. So we've got a few minutes left. I would actually love to just wrap up with your advice to all racialized talent, from emerging to established. Jesse, why don't we start with you?
Okay. I'm sure when we talked last time, I had some really profound things, and it comes in and goes out. So I probably got some new advice for you. My advice for all of us is just keep creating, keep doing all the time, like at all times, especially when you're young or new into the business and you're like, how do we do it? And you spend so much time trying to get ready. You're trying to find out, like, do I know enough? Can I do it? You have a phone that shoots in 4K. You have places you can upload what you've made. And if you don't know how to write, you can Google how to be a writer, how to be a DP, how to do lighting, how to do, and then just do the thing and do it quick, because it's probably going to be the worst thing you ever made. So get it out of the way. Get it out of the way so the next one's way better. And the advice is never stop learning, creating, and making the things that make you happy, like in your soul. Passion, purpose-driven life. Create great content and share it. They'll come. They'll watch, and you'll be proud.
Beautiful. Omatta?
Yes, Jesse, I think we really need to talk after this. You just spoke my mind. As long as you keep creating, you will get noticed. Remember, it's not a competition, but a partnership. We need to raise each other up. So get out there, make some connections, pay it forward, share your knowledge, resources, contacts, whatever you have that may be of value to the next person, do share it. On a final note, I'd just like to say that remember, the system works perfectly the way it was designed. So for it to work differently, it has to be redesigned. And we are the architects of this new system, and we have to keep redesigning to make it work perfectly for us.
Wonderful. Tonya?
I would say it's always great to remember that you are a huge success right now. You just don't know it. You are already a successful person, because I bet you're doing something you just figured because no one else is seeing it, or because it's not out there on the big screen, that it's not a success, but it is a success. I remember when I first got to LA, one of the first things I did is each audition I would go to, you kind of meet somebody there. And we ended up being a little group of like 14 people. And we started to just meet every Sunday and read a play. We weren't reading a play so that we were going to put it up on stage. We weren't reading it to critique one another. We were just finding the joy of playing again, of just, and I never like to lose that feeling. So even though I work in the industry, I have creative things that I do that none of, it's not for sale, and I'm not trying to make a career of it. I write poetry, but I'm not publishing a poet book. I might diddle around with my little camera, but I'm not trying to make a movie to be seen. I think we also just need to remember, this is really a fun industry. It is hard work. It is the hardest thing, but it can be soul, deadening, or I don't know what that word is, but it can crush you and can crush your spirit. And you have to always have something that just gives you joy, just in your own little bubble, makes you happy. So that when you go out there, you're a little stronger to face all the barriers and challenges that you are going to face. It was no different 100 years ago, 50 years ago. It's no different today. And you're just going to have to face it like all of us did and continue to. I'm 62. It's not any different now than it was for me then. And it's not any different for young people starting right now. So you just need to fight, but fight with joy is how I like to put it. Fight with some joy.
I really appreciate that, Tonya. I'm going to take that to heart as I move forward in every day that I have. I just want to thank each of our panelists so much. Jesse Lipscombe, Tonya Williams, Omatta Udalor, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for your conversation, your time, your insights, for sharing your truths. This has been really wonderful. Again, to reiterate, if you would like more information on the resources that Reelworld offers, just go to their website, reelworld.ca. This particular panel is going to be available on demand after the fact. So you can find it on the Facebook pages for Creatives Empowered, for Reelworld, and also for Ampia. And it will also live on Ampia's YouTube page as well. So if you're just tuning in and you missed it, no worries. You can catch this anytime. Also, if you are an Alberta-based artist and creative, I would encourage you to also check out creativesempowered.ca. So just to reiterate, Creatives Empowered is Alberta's first and only nonprofit org that's dedicated to representing film, TV, media, and arts professionals from emerging to established that are Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And one of the reasons we established the org again was to be that safe and supportive community for racialized talent in the province. Check out the website. If you like what you see, if it resonates with you, feel free to get in touch with us. Membership is also free, but we're also here to inherently serve all racialized talent, whether they're members or not. So please keep that in mind as well. I also would love to thank Ampia for doing this in partnership with us. I'd love to thank Matt Waterworth. He is the technical person who is behind all of this and has made this look wonderful. I'd like to thank Bill Evans and Colette Swetzer as well. And I'd like to thank Michelle Wong, who sits on the, who chairs the EDI committee for Ampia. We have social media handles. You can find all of us up on the screen there on Instagram at those handles. Any other last thoughts before we?
Just a real quick one. So just because, guys, you're out there, I know that I probably shouldn't say this if I lived in Atlanta anymore, or if I live in LA, but listen, just message me. I have 3 shows that I'm EPing, producing, and or writing this year and early next. Black people, stand up, message me, let me know. I'm talking about crew, producers. If you're a writer, if you want to hold some wires and lights, let's do some stuff and make it super melanin rich. Get at me, because I don't know where everyone's at.
Love it.
Way to go, Jesse. That's right.
Love that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.